Here's some tricks and techniques that you can do with a whammy bar. Whether you want to add some dynamic interest to your playing, or just impress your friends by making it sound a bit like an animal. So first up, we've got that classic 80s dive bomb. All you need to do is just hit a note and then dive the bar down all the way and then just slowly raise it back up. Just be warned, if anything in this video is going to knock out your tuning, it's going to be this. Next up, we've got the squeal. And this instantly reminds me of Joe Satriani. I think because I spent a lot of time listening to Joe Satriani growing up. But you'll hear it really clearly in the intro of Surfing with the Alien, and he uses it a ton live as well. In fact, I'll link a really clear example of him using it live in the description below. And it's just a variation on the dive bomb. All we're doing is we're hitting a harmonic before we dive, so either a natural harmonic or an artificial harmonic. Personally, I think an artificial harmonic works better because you get more of that squeal sound. To get the real Satriani vibe, start with the bar already lowered, then hit the harmonic, and then raise it up. And we can use that technique for our next trick, which is called the motorbike, which kind of sounds like a motorbike. And the best example of this is the intro to Kickstart My Heart by Motley Crue. So we're starting with the bar all the way down, and then what we're doing is we're using our fretting hand to pick the strings. So we're going to pick the D string first, and then we're going to raise it back up, and then we're going to mute the string, drop down again, and then pluck the A string, and then slowly raise that back up, and then do exactly the same with the E string. So it sort of sounds like a motorbike shifting gears. The real trick is just making sure that you fully return to pitch and that the strings are muted before you start the next one, otherwise it will sound a bit weird. And we can also use starting in that dropped position a little bit more musically as well to swoop up to a note. And this is another staple of Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, that kind of thing. So we start with the bar pressed down, pick the note that we want, and then raise it up to pitch. And this can be a little bit tricky because we're using our picking hand and the bar at the same time, so it might just take a little bit of practice to get it right. One thing I'll say as well is just once you've swept up to the note, make sure to take your hand fully off the bar, because even a little bit of pressure can make it sound out of tune. And now we've got probably the most boring, but a really important one, which is the accent. And this is very much in the Eddie Van Halen wheelhouse of playing. And it's exactly what the whammy bar was made for. It's just a vibrato, so we're just going to be moving it up and down slightly. But what makes it different from doing a vibrato with our hand is that we can go under the pitch of the original note, so we get a really smooth sounding vibrato. It might be a little bit boring compared to the other ones, but if you can get this technique down, you can get some really cool sounds from it. Now we can do a really cool version of this called a flutter, where we're just pinging the whammy bar like that. And what's happening is the momentum of flicking that bar is still moving the bridge, so it gives that little warbly sound. Now, one thing to be careful of is you really want to make sure that you've got a floating bridge set up. If you flick that bar and your bridge is flat against your guitar, it's just going to smack straight in your guitar, and that can damage the paint. Personally, while I think it sounds pretty cool, I don't like using this technique that much because I think it just feels a little bit too aggressive on the hardware. Now we're onto the really weird effects, and this one's called the horse, because it sounds a bit like a whinnying horse. Kind of. What we're doing is we're doing a pinch harmonic on the second fret of the G string, and then bending it up slowly, and then once we've bent it up about a quarter step, we're just going down like that. We're doing a dive bomb, but adding in a little bit of vibrato to get that whinnying sound. Sounds a little bit complicated, but it's really straightforward once you're doing it all together. And I've linked a really good example of Eddie Van Halen doing this backstage before a show in the description down below. And finally, we've got the weirdest one, which is called the elephant. Again, it's another Van Halen one, and it's actually in that same video in the description, but it sounds quite like an elephant. Now, this is probably the hardest one and the one with the least musical application, but it's really fun to try because we're going to be hitting these harmonics without being able to hear them, so it's a really good exercise. So what we're doing is we're hitting the natural harmonics on the 5th fret of the G string, the 7th fret of the B string, and the 12th fret of the E. And we're doing it with our guitar volume turned all the way down to start with. Then, while those harmonics are ringing out, we're going to drop the bar down and then raise it while turning up the volume. And for some reason, that really sounds like an elephant. Maybe more so when Eddie Van Halen does it. Now, there's a lot of different challenges for this. As I said, we're hitting the harmonics without being able to hear them, and we really want to put some power behind them because we don't want them to die out before we raise the volume back up. And the other part is turning up the volume while also raising the bar. I found that you don't want to go too low. You don't want to do like a dive bomb when you're lowering that bar. You only want to do it maybe about a quarter of the way. And that's it. Let me know how you got on in the comments below and subscribe for more guitar tips. Thank you.